SB1070 decision by the Supreme Court, and so other than that, it's wide open. So let me just remind you that the governor signed the bill on April 23rd, 2010. So we're just a little over 2 years ago, and before a week had gone by, 5 lawsuits had been filed against either the governor or the state. And by the time July had run around, we had 2 more lawsuits. And the one that made it to the Supreme Court is the one that the federal government, with our Attorney General, who was saying in Oakland just a couple of days before he testified in Congress, he said, "Oh, you know, I think this is unconstitutional. It's racially based," and he went on, and then 2 days later he appeared before Congress and said, "Well, I've taken a glance at it, but most of what I've seen is, most of my understanding is gleaned," that's where he used gleaned, "from television news and newspaper accounts." And that's the kind of guy we've got, Eric Holder, Mr. Fast and Furious himself. So I thought I would just refresh your mind just with a couple of things that I think are important. One is the preamble of SB 1070, because it kind of gets at the heart of why the legislature did what it did. And it's an intense section. We do that sometimes, but not often, but this one we did. And we said this: the legislature finds that there is a compelling interest in the cooperative enforcement of federal immigration laws throughout all of Arizona. The legislature declares that the intent of this act is to make attrition through enforcement the public policy of all state and local government agencies in Arizona. The provisions of this act are intended to work together to discourage and deter the unlawful entry and presence of aliens and economic activity by persons unlawfully present in the United States. And you'll remember, the time we passed this law, there were in excess of 1 million people crossing Arizona's border every year. And right now it's about 750,000. And it was just a few months ago in April, we had the oral argument. And the focus in the oral argument, as it was from the beginning, was what has been called Section 2B of 1070. And one thing to remember is that there were only four provisions of the bill that were at issue with the Supreme Court. The other provisions of the bill had already been upheld, things such as the anti-sanctuary city policies. Those had already been upheld. So that was the key there. But one other thing that I thought was interesting was, for a guy who was about to write the majority opinion against us, Justice Kennedy acknowledged on, if you have yours with you, your copy of the decision. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you might have it. On page 6 of the decision, if you ever get around to looking at it, look at page 6. Because this is what Justice Kennedy says. He says, the pervasiveness of federal regulation does not diminish the importance of an immigration policy to the state. So you get the idea. He says, you know, just because what I'm about to do isn't the best for Arizona, it's important to the states. He says, Arizona bears many of the consequences of unlawful immigration. Hundreds of thousands of deportable aliens are apprehended in Arizona each year. And at the time of the pleadings, he said, illegal aliens represent 6% of the state population of Arizona. And he said, in Maricopa County, these aliens are reported to be responsible for a disproportionate share of crime, serious crime. That is, 9% of the population in Maricopa County are illegal aliens. They are responsible for 22% of the felonies committed in Arizona. So you see the disproportionate nature that's there, as he's getting ready to not really be the best he can be for us. And then he goes on to say, Phoenix is a major city in the United States, yet signs along an interstate highway just 30 miles to the south warn the public to stay away. One sign reads, danger, public warning, travel not recommended, active drug and human smuggling area, visitors may encounter armed criminals and smuggling vehicles traveling at high rates of speed. This is the facts before the United States Supreme Court. And so this is how they went into it. Now the real issue for the Supreme Court that was raised by our federal government that was suing us was whether federal law essentially takes precedence over what we did in Arizona. That's really, I'm getting out of the legalese, but that's what they're saying, that we can't come in and do our thing because the federal government is already doing it. So when this decision came out not too long ago, if you watched, since the issue was always Section 2B, and I'll explain what that is in just a second, it was always 2B. That was the main focus of the criticism of this bill. When it came out that the Supreme Court unanimously upheld Section 2B, if you watch the earliest TV reports, all the anti-SB1070 people were, oh, this is terrible, this is awful, this is the worst thing that could have ever happened to us. But then there was a rally on the Capitol lawn that I watched, and the guy came out and said, you know, we knocked out 3 of these other provisions. And then the report was, oh, this is the best thing ever, big win for us. But when we held our press conference, I did announce that it was a big win for us because the heart of SB1070 was always Section 2B. What's Section 2B? Section 2B, quite frankly, parrots federal law. And not only does it parrot federal law, it has a bunch of protections built into it. And what it is if a police officer, a local police officer, has a lawful contact with someone, they're arresting someone, and if for some other reason that they can articulate, they suspect that somebody is in the United States illegally, they can call ICE and say, we've got this person here. Can you tell us if there's any holds on them? That's it. That's what the law does. But not only is that what the law does, there's additional protections. In 3 different places in the law, we said you can't base this on race alone. That you must adhere to every right that's protected under the Constitution of Arizona and the United States. And if you don't do it, then there's a problem. 3 minutes? Golly. She told me I had 30 minutes when I started. But anyway, so let me just tell you, I'll just tell you that 2B is in shape. And if you have any questions about 2B, I'll be happy to answer that. I hope you do have some questions about 2B because I want to ramble on about that one for just a second. But I will just close my presentation by telling you that Justice Anthony Scalia wrote, in my opinion, one of the most eviscerating arguments against the majority of the United States. It was fantastic. But what he has predicted has actually come to pass. Let me read to you what he says. He says, the state's whole complaint, the reason this law was passed, and this case has arisen, is that the citizens of Arizona believe federal priorities are too lax. The state has the sovereign power to protect its borders more rigorously if it wishes, absent any valid federal prohibition. The executive's policy choice of lax federal enforcement does not constitute such a prohibition. Within a week of this decision coming out and Section 2B being upheld, you had the Executive Order Dream Act Light came out. You had 287G status repealed for every Arizona law enforcement agency that had it. And that's what they needed to have cooperation with ICE. There was a directive sent out saying if any law enforcement in Arizona contacts ICE inquiring about immigration status, unless it is a serious felony, not just a felony, which is a serious crime, that's what we call a felony, but a serious felony such as a murder, then you will not take custody of them. And then this continues to go on and on with the federal government's attack on Arizona. So I won't go on with any other stuff I've prepared, but I will just tell you this. In all reality, the federal government under this administration has truly declared war on Arizona. And they have from the beginning. And we need to make sure that there's a change in this administration. And and quite frankly, it isn't just on this issue. I was watching Paul Ryan this morning talking about the economic issue. We have to have a change in the U.S. Senate and the president because we've got to we are just running and ready, we're drowning, and we are, according to Paul Ryan, his prediction is 3 years away from Greece on just a huge scale. And that's what we gotta prevent from happening. Any questions?
I know you want to talk about 2B. I actually want to talk about the other 3 sections.
Yeah.
Do they mimic or parrot federal law the same way that 2B does?
Yes, they do.
They were still struck down, but 2B wasn't.
Right, and they were struck down on what's called field preemption. And what it was is that the Supreme Court said the federal government is so taken over the field of enforcement and regulation of immigration in these areas that Arizona cannot do anything in these areas, nor any other state. They went against their own decision in 1982, the case Plata v. Doe, which actually extended and recognized states' rights to regulate immigration.
Why don't Republicans come with a comprehensive plan to settle immigration in North Carolina? Why do the Democrats come out with anything? Why don't we have a specific plan to take care of immigration?
The question is, why don't we have a specific plan to take care of immigration? The last Republican plan that I saw to take care of immigration was sponsored by now Arizona Senator candidate Jeff Flake, along with Congressman Gutierrez of Chicago, and that granted amnesty.
So why don't other?
Oh, they do, but they just don't get traction.
And can't we do it through welfare? Why can't Arizona control immigration through set welfare? Why don't we revamp welfare? Not only for Mexicans, but for all Arizonans that are on welfare.
We actually, thanks for that question, we've actually passed a proposition, indeed doing that while Governor Napolitano was our governor. She instructed our welfare agencies to specifically abrogate the will of the people in that. So that's just kind of the way that.
So it's not doable again?
No, it's there. We just need to make sure that our current guy, Tom Betlack, is the director, make sure that he enforces law. I ask him on a regular basis, I see him on a regular basis. He assures me, oh yes, we're doing. And let me just tell you a report though. It is, SB1070 is working, and so is our proposition. In May, 5,800 people applied for and received food stamps in Arizona, and I don't know if it is working or not. But only 13 were found to be illegally qualified for citizenship requirements. So does that mean they're more successful with their fraud? Or does that mean that we're not enforcing it as much? We just have to stumble on the 13? I don't know. But those are good questions. Anyway, they're dragging me on.